I'm Kane Sullivan, 34, a software engineer from Boston with a life most would envy. I always thought my family was tight-knit, a bond nothing could break. When my sister Jessica's wedding day arrived, I was bubbling with excitement despite months of growing distance. As she stood radiant in her gown, I approached with a warm smile. "Congratulations, Jess," I said, my gift in hand. She turned away without a word, as if I were invisible. By nightfall, I discovered why, and made a decision that would change everything. Before I tell you what happened next, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this turned out. Growing up in suburban Massachusetts, our home on Maple Street was the quintessential American dream. My parents, Robert and Linda Sullivan, created a warm environment where Jessica and I thrived. Dad worked as a cardiologist at Boston General, while Mom specialized in pediatric medicine at the same hospital. The Sullivan name carried weight in medical circles, a legacy stretching back 3 generations. Jessica came into this world just 2 years after me, and from the moment my parents brought her home, we formed an unbreakable bond. As kids, we built elaborate blanket forts in the living room, transforming ordinary furniture into magical castles where we ruled as benevolent monarchs. During summer thunderstorms, she would crawl into my bed, and I'd tell her stories until the lightning no longer frightened her. I was her protector, her confidant, her friend. When Jessica fell off her bike at age 8 and broke her arm, I rode my own bicycle alongside the ambulance all the way to the hospital, refusing to let her face the pain alone. The nurses still tell that story. When bullies targeted me in middle school for being the smart kid, Jessica, though younger and smaller, stood up to them with a fierce loyalty that earned her detention but won my eternal gratitude. Our inside jokes formed a private language. One word could trigger uncontrollable laughter only we understood. Pancake Tuesday referred to the time I flipped a breakfast pancake that stuck to the kitchen ceiling, remaining there for hours before dropping onto Dad's head. Operation Sprinkler was our code for the summer we reprogrammed the yard irrigation system to surprise our strict algebra tutor with an unexpected shower. While other siblings drifted apart in adolescence, we grew closer. I helped Jessica study for her biology exams. She proofread my English essays. When our grandmother passed away during my junior year, we processed our grief together, staying up all night sharing memories and supporting each other when our parents were too consumed by their own sorrow. The expectation was clear from an early age. Sullivan children became doctors. My father would bring us to the hospital on weekends, showing us around with unmistakable pride. One day, he'd say, "You'll both walk these halls with the same dedication to healing." Jessica embraced this destiny wholeheartedly, decorating her room with anatomy charts and medical journals by age 14. I was different. Computers captivated me from the moment Dad brought home our first family PC. While Jessica volunteered at the hospital, I taught myself programming languages, creating simple games and applications that grew increasingly sophisticated. When the time came to apply for college, I chose computer science instead of pre-med. The family dinner where I announced my decision remains etched in my memory. Dad's fork froze midway to his mouth. Mom's smile faltered. Jessica looked between us, tension thickening the air. "Computer science?" Dad repeated, as though the words were foreign. "But you're a Sullivan." "I know who I am," I replied, heart pounding but voice steady. "And I know what I love. I can help people through technology." The weeks that followed were difficult. Silent treatments, passive-aggressive comments, pamphlets for medical schools mysteriously appearing on my desk. Jessica became my unexpected ally, defending my choice even while pursuing her own medical dreams. "Kane needs to follow his path," she told our parents during one heated discussion. "Just because it's different doesn't make it wrong." Eventually, they accepted my decision, though disappointment lingered in subtle ways. I graduated with honors from MIT, while Jessica excelled at Harvard Medical School, continuing the Sullivan medical tradition. Despite our different paths, our bond remained strong. Sunday dinners at our parents' house became a ritual when we both returned to Boston after college. Jessica would share fascinating hospital stories while I explained my latest projects developing healthcare software. Ironically, our careers complemented each other. As Jessica rose through the ranks at Boston General, becoming a talented trauma surgeon, I built systems designed to make healthcare more efficient and accessible. When I landed my position at MedTech Innovations, creating software specifically for hospitals, my parents finally appeared genuinely proud. I was contributing to medicine, just in a different way. Jessica met Michael Harrington during her second year of residency. He was a neurologist with kind eyes and a quiet confidence that complemented my sister's energetic personality. The first time she brought him to family dinner, I knew he was special from the way she watched him interact with our parents. Michael and I bonded over craft beer and a shared love for hiking the New England trails. I considered him the brother I never had. When they announced their engagement at Christmas dinner last year, I was the first to raise a toast. To my amazing sister and the man lucky enough to win her heart, I said, genuinely happy for them. Jessica wiped away tears as we embraced. Everything felt perfect. Looking back, the subtle shift began shortly after that night. Jessica's texts became less frequent, her responses shorter. Calls went to voicemail more often. When we did speak, she seemed distracted, ending conversations abruptly. I attributed this to wedding planning stress and her demanding schedule at the hospital. Then came the formal wedding invitation in the mail. Not a personal call, not a special request to be part of the ceremony, just a gold-embossed card identical to those sent to distant relatives and casual acquaintances. When I called Jessica to ask about being a groomsman or giving a speech, her response was unexpectedly cool. "We're keeping things simple," she said, a strange distance in her voice. "The wedding party is already set." I brushed off my hurt feelings, focusing instead on my excitement for her special day. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a heartbreak I couldn't have imagined. As the months passed and Jessica's wedding approached, the distance between us grew from a small crack to an unbridgeable canyon. I made countless attempts to be involved in the wedding preparations, offering to help with everything from venue scouting to playlist creation, only to be politely but firmly rebuffed. "Thanks, but Michael's sister is handling the music," Jessica would say. Or, "Mom's friend is taking care of the flowers." Always an excuse, always a reason why my help wasn't needed. One evening, I called to offer financial assistance. My software company had recently secured a major contract, and I wanted to contribute to giving Jessica her dream wedding. "I'd love to pay for the honeymoon," I suggested. "You and Michael have been talking about Bali for years. Let me make that happen." There was a pause on the line before Jessica responded, her voice strangely formal. "That's generous, Kane, but we've already arranged everything. Michael's parents are covering most expenses." "Oh," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "Well, at least let me handle the rehearsal dinner. I know a great restaurant by the harbor." "Actually," she replied, "we decided to keep it intimate. Just the wedding party and immediate family." The word stung. Wasn't I immediate family? Before I could question this, Jessica claimed she had an emergency at the hospital and ended the call. My girlfriend Sophia noticed the change in my family's behavior during a Sunday dinner at our parents' house. Jessica and Michael arrived late and left early, barely engaging with me throughout the meal. My parents, usually eager to hear about my latest projects, asked only perfunctory questions while lavishing attention on the engaged couple. "Is it just me?" Sophia whispered as we drove home. "Or was that incredibly awkward? Your family barely acknowledged you." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "They're just excited about the wedding. Jessica's the first to get married, and she's continuing the family medical tradition. It's a big deal for them." Sophia wasn't convinced. "Kane, something feels off. Have you done something to upset them?" I racked my brain, reviewing recent interactions. "Nothing I can think of. Maybe they're still harboring disappointment that I didn't become a doctor. After all these years? When you've been so successful?" Sophia shook her head. "That doesn't make sense." I couldn't argue with her logic, but I had no better explanation. I called my childhood friend Alex, who would also be attending the wedding, hoping he might have insight. "Hey, have you noticed anything strange with Jessica lately?" I asked after catching up. There was an uncomfortable pause before Alex answered. "Strange, how?" "She's been distant." "Actually, my whole family has. I feel like I'm being frozen out, but I don't know why." "Weddings are stressful," Alex offered, his tone oddly evasive. "I'm sure everything will be fine once it's over." "You know something," I pressed. "What aren't you telling me?" "Look, I need to go," Alex replied. "Let's catch up at the wedding, okay?" The conversation left me more confused and concerned than before. Despite the growing tension, I spent weeks searching for the perfect wedding gift for Jessica. I eventually found a vintage medical illustration book from the 19th century, similar to one our grandfather had owned that Jessica had always admired. I paired it with a custom-designed stethoscope engraved with her new initials. The gift was expensive and thoughtful, reflecting our shared history and her passion for medicine. 3 days before the wedding, our parents hosted a dinner for out-of-town relatives. I arrived early to help set up, eager for family time. As I approached the dining room with a stack of plates, I overheard my mother's voice from the kitchen. "Are you sure about this arrangement? He's going to be hurt." "We discussed this," my father responded firmly. "Jessica's wishes come first right now. After what happened, she deserves that much." "What if he makes a scene?" "Robert, he wouldn't," my mother said. Despite everything, Kane has always been considerate. I froze, dishes clutched in my hands. They were talking about me. Before I could hear more, my father spotted me in the doorway. The conversation halted abruptly, replaced with artificial cheerfulness. Throughout dinner, I felt like an actor who had wandered onto the wrong stage. Relatives who had always been affectionate seemed awkward around me. Jessica barely made eye contact. When family stories were shared, my contributions were met with strained smiles or quick subject changes. After dessert, I found Jessica alone on the patio, staring at the stars. It was my chance to clear the air. "Jess," I said, taking the chair beside her. "Did I do something wrong? You, Mom, Dad, everyone's treating me differently. If I've hurt you somehow, please tell me so I can fix it." For a moment, vulnerability flickered across her face. She opened her mouth as if to speak candidly, then glanced through the window at our parents watching us. Her expression hardened. "Nothing's wrong," she said flatly. "I'm just stressed about the wedding. Everything's fine." The lie hung between us, palpable and painful. This wasn't the sister who had once shared her every thought with me. As Jessica walked back inside, I remained on the patio, a heaviness settling in my chest. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, that wedding stress was creating imaginary problems. Everything would be better at the ceremony, I told myself. It had to be. I couldn't have been more wrong. The morning of Jessica's wedding arrived with perfect blue skies, as if nature itself was celebrating. I woke early, excitement temporarily overshadowing the anxiety that had built over the previous months. Today would fix everything, I thought. Whatever tension had developed would surely dissolve in the joy of the occasion. Sophia and I dressed carefully her in an elegant burgundy dress, me in a tailored gray suit with a tie that matched the wedding colors. Jessica had never specified I should wear anything particular, but I'd asked Sophia to find out the color scheme through a mutual friend. "You look handsome," Sophia said, straightening my tie. Her eyes reflected concern. "Whatever happens today, remember I'm right beside you." "It's going to be great," I insisted, more to convince myself than her. Jessica's still my sister. This is her big day. We arrived at the vineyard venue 2 hours early. I'd offered to help with setup, hoping to show my support and repair whatever invisible damage existed in our relationship. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few vendor trucks and the coordinator's car. "Perfect timing," I told Sophia. "We can pitch in before guests arrive." The venue coordinator, a woman named Diane with a clipboard and an earpiece, greeted us at the entrance to the restored barn where the reception would take place. Her smile was polite but confused. "Hi there, you're early. The ceremony doesn't start until 4. "I know," I explained. "I'm Kane Sullivan, the bride's brother. I thought I could help with final preparations." Diane consulted her clipboard, flipping through several pages. "Sullivan, I don't see you on the family assistance list." "There's a list?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Yes, the bride was very specific about who should be involved in the setup. She looked uncomfortable. "Perhaps check with your parents? They're in the main house getting ready." Sophia squeezed my hand as we walked toward the farmhouse. Inside, we found a flurry of activity. Photographers capturing getting-ready moments, bridesmaids in matching robes, flower arrangements being positioned just so. My parents were in the central room, my father adjusting his bow tie while my mother fussed with her corsage. "Mom, Dad," I called, approaching with a smile. "We're here to help. What can we do?" They turned, startled expressions quickly masked with strained smiles. My mother glanced at my father before responding. "Kane, you're early. Everything's under control. Why don't you and Sophia get some coffee in the garden? The ceremony setup is almost complete." "Are you sure? I'd really like to help." I looked around. "Is Jessica upstairs? I'd love to wish her good luck before everything starts." "She's busy with hair and makeup," my father interjected quickly. "Very strict schedule today. You know how these things are." I didn't know, actually. How would I? But I nodded and retreated with Sophia to the garden, confusion building. We sat at a small table, watching staff members hurry past with purpose that highlighted our own uselessness. "Your parents barely looked at you," Sophia noted quietly. "Kane, something is definitely wrong." "Let's find the seating chart," I suggested, needing to do something. "At least we can locate our table." In the reception barn, elegant place cards were arranged alphabetically on a vintage mirror. Sophia found hers quickly, then helped me search for mine. We went through the S section twice before I spotted my card, filed under K instead. "Table 23, I read, frowning. "Where's that?" We scanned the venue until we found it the furthest table from the head table, positioned near the service entrance. A table clearly designated for distant acquaintances, not immediate family. "This can't be right," I murmured, checking the surrounding place cards. None belonged to other family members. Even my cousin from Seattle, who hadn't seen Jessica in years, was seated closer to the head table. As guests began to arrive, my parents emerged to greet them. I watched from a distance as they embraced relatives, laughed with friends, and directed everyone with warm smiles, everyone except me. Twice I approached, trying to participate in conversations, only to have my parents politely excuse themselves moments later. Then I saw her. Jessica appeared on the porch in her wedding gown, surrounded by bridesmaids, looking radiant despite the private photographs being taken. My heart swelled with pride and love, momentarily pushing aside the hurt. This was my little sister, embarking on one of life's most significant journeys. I waited until the photographer took a break, then approached, gift box in hand. "Jess," I called softly, "you look absolutely beautiful." She turned, and for a split second something like pain crossed her face. Then her expression became impassive, almost cold. "Congratulations," I said, extending the carefully wrapped package. "I found something I think you'll love." Jessica glanced at the gift, but made no move to take it. One of her bridesmaids, looking uncomfortable, stepped forward instead. "I'll put this with the others," she offered, taking the box from my hands. "Thanks for coming," Jessica said, the formality in her voice striking me like a physical blow. Without waiting for my response, she turned and walked back inside, bridesmaids following like a protective shield. I stood frozen, the brief interaction replaying in my mind. Those 4 words, "thanks for coming," were what you said to your mother's colleague who attended out of obligation, not your only brother who had once been your best friend. Sophia appeared at my side, having witnessed everything. "Kane," she whispered, slipping her hand into mine. "I'm so sorry." A knot formed in my throat. Other guests were watching now, curiosity and pity in their glances. Heat rose to my face as I realized how public this rejection had been. "Let's find our seats," I managed, turning away before emotions could overwhelm me. "The ceremony will be starting soon." As we took our places among strangers at the back of the gathering, I noticed the wedding coordinator directing the processional lineup. Parents, grandparents, wedding party, all had specific entrances carefully orchestrated. My name was never called. The ceremony proceeded with picture-perfect elegance. Jessica and Michael exchanged heartfelt vows that brought tears to many eyes, including mine, though my tears carried a different weight. When the officiant invited the parents to stand for a family blessing, I remained seated, clearly not included in the definition of family today. As Jessica and Michael sealed their union with a kiss, guests erupted in applause. I clapped too, muscle memory taking over while my mind struggled to process what was happening. My sister had just gotten married, and somehow I had been relegated to the role of spectator rather than participant in this milestone. Anger began to replace confusion, a slow burn starting in my chest. Whatever I had done to deserve this treatment, didn't I at least deserve to know what it was? The wound of exclusion was deep enough. The absence of explanation twisted the knife. The recessional music started, and the newlyweds beamed as they walked back down the aisle. Jessica's eyes swept over the crowd, meeting those of friends and family with joy until she reached me. Her gaze skipped over as if the seat contained nothing but air. At that moment, something broke inside me. This wasn't stress or oversight. This was deliberate. My family had made a conscious decision to treat me as an outsider on this important day, and I still had no idea why. The reception began with a flurry of activity as guests migrated from the ceremony space to the elegantly decorated barn. A string quartet played softly, while servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Under different circumstances, I would have appreciated the thoughtful details Jessica had chosen, the vintage medical books used as centerpieces, the signature cocktails named after places significant to her and Michael. Instead, I moved through the space like a ghost, hyper-aware of the careful distance my family maintained. When the DJ announced, "And now, let's welcome the immediate family of the bride and groom," my parents joined Michael's family in the center of the dance floor. My name wasn't called. No one seemed to notice my absence except Sophia, whose hand remained firmly clasped in mine, anchoring me. "I need a drink," I muttered, heading toward the bar where I spotted Alex, my childhood friend. After ordering a double whiskey, I cornered him away from other guests. "You're going to tell me what's going on," I said, abandoning pretense. "Now." Alex shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if seeking escape. "Kane, man, this isn't the place. Every member of my family is treating me like I have some contagious disease. If you know why, you need to tell me." Alex sighed, took a long sip of his beer, then another. "Look, I only know pieces. Jessica swore me to secrecy. I'm being publicly humiliated at my sister's wedding without knowing why," I pressed. "Does our 20-year friendship mean anything to you?" Guilt flashed across his face. He led me further from the crowd, to a quiet corner behind a large floral arrangement. "It's about that healthcare software you developed," he finally said. "The one that was implemented at Boston General 6 months ago." Confusion replaced anger. MedTrack? What about it? That project was a huge success. Alex shook his head. "Not entirely. There was an incident. A major one." My stomach dropped as Alex continued. The story emerged in reluctant fragments, each more devastating than the last. 6 months ago, my company had rolled out MedTrack, a comprehensive system designed to streamline everything from patient records to surgical scheduling at Boston General. After years of development and rigorous testing, the hospital had fully integrated the software across all departments. I had personally overseen the implementation, working closely with the administration. It was the pinnacle of my career, merging my technical expertise with my family's medical world. What I didn't know, what no one had told me, was that 3 weeks after implementation, the system experienced a critical failure during a high-risk surgery, Jessica's surgery. "She was operating on a 36-year-old mother of 3, Alex explained, his voice low. "Emergency procedure after a car accident." The MedTrack system was supposed to display real-time blood work results and medication information. I felt lightheaded as I began to understand. What happened? The system froze, then displayed incorrect information when it rebooted. By the time they realized and switched to manual protocols, critical minutes were lost. The patient didn't make it. The whiskey turned bitter in my mouth. "Jessica lost a patient because of my software?" Alex nodded grimly. The hospital launched an investigation. Initially, they questioned Jessica's decision-making, suggesting she might have misread the data or responded inadequately to the system failure. Horror washed over me. My sister's reputation, her career, her confidence, all had been placed in jeopardy because of technology I had created. "She was temporarily suspended pending review," Alex continued. "It was brutal, Kane. She was devastated, questioning everything. Michael almost called off the engagement, not because he blamed her, but because she pushed him away, convinced her career was over. Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me?" My voice cracked with the weight of this revelation. The investigation eventually cleared her. They determined it was a system failure, not human error. But the damage was done. Jessica had to fight to regain the trust of her colleagues. Some patients requested different surgeons when they learned she was involved in the incident. I struggled to process this information. But if the software was at fault, why would she blame me personally? I didn't code a deliberate error. Alex looked uncomfortable again. "That's where things get complicated. Apparently, there were early warning signs about potential issues with the medication cross-checking module. Your team had identified them during final testing. A cold realization dawned. The implementation deadline, I whispered. The hospital administration pushed to launch before the fiscal year ended, even though we requested 2 more weeks for additional testing. Jessica found out from someone in IT that you signed off on the early launch despite known risks, Alex said. She believes you chose professional success over patient safety. Your parents sided with her. The room seemed to spin around me. I had indeed signed the final approval, but only after the hospital board insisted the issues were minor and could be addressed through post-implementation patches. I'd trusted their medical expertise over my own concerns. A decision I now realized had had catastrophic consequences. The worst part for Jessica wasn't just losing the patient, Alex added quietly. It was believing that her own brother had put his company's contract above medical safety, knowing that if the system had been properly tested, her patient might still be alive. The full weight of the situation crashed down on me. For 6 months, my sister had been carrying this burden, believing I had knowingly compromised patient safety for profit or convenience. My parents, loyal to the medical profession above all, had embraced this narrative without ever giving me a chance to explain. Why didn't they confront me? I asked, my voice hollow. Why this silent treatment instead of just telling me what happened? Alex shrugged helplessly. Jessica was too hurt, too angry. Your parents thought confronting you would make the wedding planning even more stressful for her. They decided the punishment should be excluding you from the meaningful parts of the wedding. I think they expected you to figure out what you'd done wrong. I thought of all the unanswered texts, the canceled plans, the awkward family dinners. Not once had anyone mentioned the software failure or Jessica's patient. Not once had I been given the opportunity to explain, apologize, or make amends. I need to talk to Jessica, I said, straightening up. Clear this up right now. Alex caught my arm. Kane, think about what you're doing. This is her wedding day. Do you really want to create a scene? His words stopped me. Despite everything, despite the hurt and anger coursing through me, I couldn't bring myself to disrupt Jessica's celebration. Whatever she believed about me, however unfair her assumptions, today wasn't the day to correct them. Sophia approached, concern etched on her face. Kane, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I turned to her, the devastating truth still reverberating through me. I need to tell you something, I said, and then we need to decide what to do next. As I quietly explained the situation to Sophia, I watched my sister and new brother-in-law laughing with guests across the room, surrounded by family who had chosen to exclude rather than communicate. The distance between us had never felt so vast or so unnecessary. The rest of the reception blurred around me as I processed Alex's revelation. The elegant venue now felt suffocating, every smile and toast a painful reminder of my family's decision to cast me aside without explanation. Sophia sat beside me at our isolated table, her presence the only thing keeping me grounded. I can't believe they didn't talk to you about this, she said, indignation coloring her voice. 6 months of cold shoulders instead of a single honest conversation. I watched my sister dancing with our father, her face radiant, guests surrounding them, capturing the perfect moment on their phones. My mother wiped away tears of joy from the sidelines. What do you want to do? Sophia asked, squeezing my hand. We could leave now, or I could confront them, I finished her thought. Create a scene that everyone would remember instead of the perfect day Jessica planned. The impulse was tempting. The hurt child in me wanted to stand up, grab the microphone, and force my family to acknowledge what they'd done. Make them explain to everyone why they'd treated their son and brother like a pariah. The fantasy lasted only seconds before rational thought returned. No, I said finally. I won't do that to her. Despite everything, Jessica was still my sister. The little girl who had crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. The teenager who had defended my career choice to our disappointed parents. Whatever she believed about me now, I couldn't bring myself to taint her wedding day with confrontation. You're a better person than they deserve right now, Sophia observed quietly. I'm just trying to be the person she used to think I was, I replied. We sat in silence, watching the celebration continue without us. The cake cutting, the bouquet toss. Traditions unfolding as if nothing were amiss, as if a crucial member of the family wasn't sitting in emotional exile. I need to make a decision, I said finally. Staying here is just prolonging the pain, but leaving without explanation feels wrong too. Sophia considered this. Write her a note, something she can read after today, when the wedding excitement has faded. The idea resonated. I wouldn't disrupt Jessica's special day, but I wouldn't leave without trying to bridge the chasm between us either. Taking out my phone, I began composing an email, then stopped. This demanded something more personal than digital communication. I need paper and a pen, I said, standing up, and I need to retrieve my gift before we go. Sophia followed me to the gift table, where we located the package I'd brought earlier. The hotel concierge provided stationery from the front desk. Finding a quiet spot in the garden, I sat down to write what might be the most important letter of my life. Jessica, by the time you read this, you'll have noticed I left your reception early. I just learned about what happened 6 months ago. The system failure during your surgery, the patient you lost, the investigation that followed. I had no idea, not because I didn't care, but because no one told me. I understand now why you've been distant, why today felt like I was watching my sister's wedding as an outsider rather than experiencing it as your brother. You believe I knowingly rushed flawed software into use, prioritizing profit over safety, over your career, over human life. The truth is more complicated. Yes, I signed off on the early implementation, but only after being repeatedly assured by hospital administration that the remaining issues were minor and could be addressed post-launch without risk. I trusted their medical expertise over my own reservations. That trust was misplaced, and a patient paid the ultimate price. For that, I carry profound regret. What hurts most isn't being excluded from your wedding. It's that you, Mom, and Dad decided I was guilty without ever giving me a chance to explain. You chose punishment over conversation, silence over communication. For a family that once prided itself on closeness, we failed each other completely. I won't disrupt your special day with confrontation. You deserve to celebrate without drama. But I also can't pretend everything is normal while being treated as if I don't exist. Inside this box is something I searched months to find: a first-edition copy of Gray's Anatomy illustrations that reminded me of Grandpa's book you always admired, along with a stethoscope engraved with your new initials. I hope they remind you of both your professional calling and the brother who, despite everything, still believes in you. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'll be waiting. Love always. Kane. I read the note twice, making sure it conveyed both my hurt and my hope for reconciliation. Then I slipped it into an envelope and attached it to the gift. Ready? Sophia asked as I returned to our table. I took one last look around the reception. My parents were now dancing, looking happier than I'd seen them in months. Jessica was laughing with her bridesmaids. No one seemed to notice or care that I was preparing to leave. Almost, I replied, approaching a server. Could you please make sure this gets to the bride? It's important that she receives it personally, not just added to the gift pile. The young man nodded. Of course, sir. I'll give it to her myself once the current dance set ends. Thank you, I said, pressing a generous tip into his hand. Sophia and I slipped out quietly, without goodbyes. The drive back to our hotel passed in heavy silence, both of us lost in thought. The beautiful June evening continued around us, indifferent to the emotional storm I was weathering. In our hotel room, I removed my tie with mechanical movements, mind still processing everything I'd learned. Sophia ordered room service neither of us had the appetite for, then sat beside me on the edge of the bed. What now? She asked gently. Now we go home, I decided. There's nothing more to be done tonight. When Jessica reads my note, the next move will be hers. We packed quickly, changing our flights from Sunday to that same evening. As I zipped my suitcase, my phone began to vibrate. A text from Alex. They found your note. Jessica's asking where you are. What should I tell her? I stared at the message without responding. Of course they'd found it. The server had done his job, but after 6 months of being shut out, after a full day of being treated like a stranger, I couldn't bring myself to answer immediately. Let them wonder where I was for a change. Let them feel a fraction of the confusion I'd experienced. Another text arrived, this one from my mother. Kane, call us immediately. We need to talk. Then my father, son, where are you? Jessica is upset. The irony wasn't lost on me. For half a year, they'd had countless opportunities to talk, to explain, to include me in this significant family challenge. They'd chosen silence. Now they demanded immediate communication on their terms. "Your phone's blowing up," Sophia observed as it buzzed again. "I know," I said, hitting the power button until the screen went dark. "I'll deal with it tomorrow. Tonight, I need space to think." As our Uber arrived to take us to the airport, I felt a strange sense of calm replacing the hurt and anger. For months, I'd been the one reaching out, trying to maintain connection, confused by the growing distance. Now I understood the situation completely. The power dynamic had shifted. Whatever happened next would be on my terms, not theirs. "Are you okay?" Sophia asked as we settled into our seats on the plane. I thought about it seriously before answering. "No," I admitted, "but I will be. For the first time in months, I know exactly where I stand. There's clarity in that, even if it's painful." As the plane took off, carrying us away from the wedding and my family's misguided judgment, I allowed myself a small, sad smile. Sometimes walking away, however temporarily, is the strongest statement you can make. My phone remained off in my pocket, the cascade of messages unread, as I chose myself over their convenience for perhaps the first time in our relationship. Our flight landed in Boston shortly after midnight. The city lights glittered below as we descended, a beautiful sight that contrasted sharply with my internal landscape. By mutual agreement, Sophia came home with me, rather than returning to her own apartment. Neither of us wanted to be alone after such an emotionally draining day. "You should probably turn your phone back on," she suggested gently, as we settled into my living room with much-needed cups of tea. "At least see what they're saying." With reluctance, I powered up my phone. It immediately began buzzing like an angry hornet, notifications flooding the screen. 27 missed calls, 43 text messages, 15 voicemails, most from my parents and Jessica, but also from Alex, Michael, and even some relatives who had never contacted me directly before. From Jessica, 8:45 p.m. "Where are you? We need to talk." From Mom, 8:52 p.m. "Kane Sullivan, call me this instant. What were you thinking, leaving like that?" From Dad, 9:01 p.m. "Son, your absence is causing a scene. Call us back." From Jessica, 9:17 p.m. "Please tell me you're okay at least, despite everything." From Michael, 9:25 p.m. "Kane, your sister is crying. Whatever happened between you two, please come back or at least answer her calls." From Mom, 9:36 p.m. "Kane, we should have talked to you about what happened. You're right. Please call." From Jessica, 10:02 p.m. "I just read your note again. I didn't know that's how it happened. Please call me when you get this." The messages continued, growing increasingly concerned and conciliatory as time passed. The final text, sent just 15 minutes before we landed, was from Jessica. "Kane, I'm so sorry. You're right, we should have talked to you instead of shutting you out. What we did today was unforgivable. Please let me know you're safe. We're all worried sick." The voicemails told a similar story, starting with demands for explanation and gradually shifting to apologies and concern. My mother's last message was tearful, admitting they had handled everything badly from the beginning. "What are you going to do?" Sophia asked, watching my face as I absorbed these communications. "Not respond tonight," I said firmly. "They've had 6 months to talk to me. They can wait until morning." Part of me felt guilty for causing them worry. Another part, the part still raw from being treated as an outcast at my own sister's wedding, felt a grim satisfaction. For once, they were experiencing the anxiety of being cut off, of not knowing where they stood. I slept fitfully, waking early to find several more messages had arrived overnight. After a quiet breakfast with Sophia, I made a decision. I'm going to respond, but not individually. One message to all of them. I composed a text to my parents, Jessica and Michael. "I'm safe. I needed space to process everything I learned yesterday. I'll be in touch when I'm ready to talk. Please respect that." Within seconds, my phone began ringing, Jessica calling. I declined the call, then silenced my phone. This would happen on my timetable, not theirs. Sophia had to return to her apartment for work commitments, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I spent the day researching the MedTrack incident, finding medical journal articles and internal hospital bulletins that described the system failure in clinical terms. None mentioned Jessica by name, but I could read between the lines. The investigation report confirmed what Alex had told me. The system had indeed malfunctioned during a critical procedure, displaying incorrect medication information after rebooting from a crash. The report also noted that concerns about the medication module had been documented but deemed low risk by implementation decision-makers. That was the crux of it. I had been one of those decision-makers, trusting the hospital board's assessment over my own team's concerns. While I hadn't been negligent by any professional standard, I had missed an opportunity to be more forceful in my objections. By evening, I felt ready for a more substantive response. I emailed my sister, Jessica. I needed time to process what happened yesterday and what I learned about the past 6 months. I understand your pain and anger over losing a patient due to a system failure in software my company developed. What I can't understand is why you, Mom and Dad, decided the appropriate response was to shut me out completely rather than telling me what happened. I've spent today reviewing the incident reports. You're right that there were warning signs about potential issues with the medication module. What you may not know is that I raised these concerns repeatedly with the hospital board, who insisted the risks were theoretical and manageable. I trusted their medical expertise over my technical instincts. That trust was misplaced, and I have to live with that. But Jessica, you never gave me a chance to explain, to apologize, to make amends. Instead, you assumed the worst about me and convinced our parents to do the same. The brother who once rode his bike alongside your ambulance apparently wasn't worth a single honest conversation. I need time to decide where we go from here. Please, don't call or text for a while. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Kane. I sent similar emails to my parents, explaining my perspective while establishing clear boundaries. Then I turned my attention to something constructive, identifying exactly what had gone wrong with the MedTrack system. Over the next week, I dove deep into the software code, requesting access logs and error reports from my company's archives. Working remotely, I avoided the office, needing solitude to focus. What I discovered troubled me deeply. The medication module's failure hadn't been a random glitch. It was a foreseeable consequence of rushing implementation before addressing certain architecture issues my team had flagged. Issues the hospital board had dismissed as acceptable risks given their timeline and budget constraints. More disturbing was evidence that my concerns had been systematically downplayed in communications to the surgical department. Notes from board meetings revealed discussions about managing developer anxiety and avoiding unnecessary delays. Jessica and her colleagues had never been fully informed about the potential risks they were assuming. These discoveries didn't absolve me of responsibility. I should have been more adamant, should have refused to sign off until all critical issues were resolved, but they did reveal that hospital administration had prioritized budget and schedule over complete transparency about risks. When I finally answered a call from Michael 10 days after the wedding, he confirmed this perspective. Kane, she never knew about your objections, he said. All Jessica heard was that your company had identified issues but implemented anyway. The hospital risk management team implied you were focused on the contract rather than safety concerns. Why didn't you or Jessica just ask me directly? I challenged. Michael sighed heavily. Pride, hurt, fear of confirmation. Jessica was devastated after losing that patient. It was easier to blame an external factor, you and your software, than confront the possibility that the hospital system she believes in might have failed her too. And my parents? They've always sided with medicine over technology, Michael said carefully. When Jessica was hurting, they closed ranks around her without question. By the time things calmed down, the narrative was set. The conversation with Michael broke the ice. 2 days later, I agreed to meet Jessica alone at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our homes. The reunion was awkward, tense with unspoken emotions. My sister looked smaller somehow, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't been sleeping well. I don't know where to start, she said after we sat down with our drinks. The beginning would help, I replied, keeping my tone even. Why didn't you call me the day the system failed? Jessica stared into her coffee. I was in shock. A 36-year-old mother died on my table, Kane. The preliminary review suggested equipment failure rather than surgical error, which was a relief until I learned it was your software that failed. So you assumed I knowingly deployed faulty software? Without even asking me what happened. I was angry, she admitted. Scared. When the hospital's risk management team mentioned your company had documented concerns pre-implementation, I I needed someone to blame. You were an easy target. The honesty hurt, but was also refreshing after months of evasion and silence. What you and our parents did was cruel, I said plainly, excluding me from your wedding without explanation, treating me like a stranger in front of everyone we know. Do you have any idea how that felt? Tears filled her eyes. We handled it terribly. All of it. Mom and Dad thought they were protecting me by not reopening the wound before the wedding. I let them, because confronting you meant confronting my own part in this mess. Your part? I never advocated for better testing of the new system, she admitted. The surgical department had opportunities to request more rigorous trials before full implementation. We were all so excited about the efficiency gains that we rushed forward. I share responsibility for what happened. This admission surprised me. I reached across the table, offering my hand. After a moment's hesitation, Jessica took it. I'm sorry about your patient, I said softly. And I'm sorry I didn't fight harder against the early launch. We both made mistakes, Jess. But only one of us was punished for them, she acknowledged. Kane, what we did to you at the wedding was unforgivable. Not unforgivable, I corrected. Just deeply hurtful. And completely avoidable if anyone had just talked to me. We spent the next 2 hours clearing the air, examining how family dynamics and professional pressures had created the perfect storm of miscommunication. The conversation wasn't easy, but it was necessary, the first step toward healing a relationship I had feared might be permanently damaged. As we prepared to leave, Jessica asked hesitantly, "Will you come to Sunday dinner this week? Mom and Dad need to make their own amends." I considered the invitation. Not yet. I need more time. This isn't just about one conversation. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Whenever you're ready, we'll be there. That night, I called Sophia to update her on the meeting. It's a start, I concluded. Not forgiveness yet, but a path toward it. I'm proud of you, she said. Many people wouldn't have given them another chance after what they did. They're still my family, I replied. Flawed, frustrating, but mine. And I'm not exactly perfect either. The weeks that followed brought gradual steps toward reconciliation. Individual conversations with my parents, family therapy sessions where we addressed not just the wedding incident but deeper patterns of communication and loyalty. Painful truths emerged, but so did renewed commitment to honesty and respect. While rebuilding my family relationships, I also channeled my energy into something constructive, a comprehensive review of medical software safety protocols. My company needed to ensure nothing like this ever happened again. The summer passed in a blur of purpose. While continuing to maintain healthy boundaries with my family, I threw myself into researching and developing enhanced safety protocols for medical software. My experience had shown me that the gap between technical development and medical application could have life-or-death consequences. Working with a dedicated team at MedTech Innovations, I spent countless hours identifying potential failure points in our systems. We developed a new testing framework specifically designed for high-risk medical applications, with multiple redundancies and enhanced validation processes. By August, I was ready to present our findings to the broader medical technology community. The conference room at Boston General was packed: software engineers, hospital administrators, medical professionals, and safety compliance officers all gathered to hear our presentation. I spotted Jessica in the back row, having taken time from her surgical schedule to attend. Our eyes met briefly, her slight nod communicating both professional respect and personal support. The incident 6 months ago was a wake-up call, I began, addressing the room. A reminder that in healthcare technology, there is no margin for error. Every line of code, every system integration, every implementation decision directly impacts patient safety. For the next hour, I outlined our new approach to medical software development, emphasizing transparency, rigorous testing, and improved communication between technical teams and medical staff. The presentation concluded with a proposed industry-wide standard for safety certification that went well beyond current requirements. The response was overwhelming. Hospital administrators asked pointed questions about implementation timelines and costs, while medical staff expressed appreciation for the emphasis on clinical input throughout the development process. Several competing software companies expressed interest in adopting similar standards. After the formal presentation ended, Jessica approached, professional but warmer than she had been in months. "That was impressive," she said. The surgical department is already discussing how to better partner with IT on these protocols. Thanks for coming, I replied. It means a lot. You took something painful and turned it into positive change, she observed. Well, it's exactly what I should have expected from you. This conversation, brief as it was, marked another step in our healing journey. Jessica was seeing me again as her brother, not just as the person whose software had failed her. The wall between us was slowly crumbling. 1 month after the wedding, Jessica suggested meeting at our childhood home. Our parents were traveling, giving us space for a more personal conversation than our coffee shop reconciliation had allowed. We sat in the backyard where we'd played as children, autumn leaves beginning to fall around us. The physical setting seemed to unlock deeper emotional honesty. I missed you at my wedding, Jessica admitted, pain evident in her voice. Even while I was angry, even while I thought I wanted you excluded, there was this hole where you should have been. Michael's best man gave this speech about siblings, and all I could think was that my brother should have been the one speaking. I would have given one hell of a toast, I said, attempting humor despite the lump in my throat. I know you would have. She reached for my hand. Kane, I made a terrible mistake. We all did. Punishing you instead of talking to you. Assuming the worst instead of giving you a chance to explain. Why? I asked the question that had haunted me for months. We used to tell each other everything. When did that change? Jessica considered this carefully. I think it was fear. After the patient died, after the investigation started, I was terrified my career was over. Finding out your software was involved. It was easier to be angry than afraid. Anger felt powerful when everything else seemed out of control. And Mom and Dad just followed your lead? They've always been protective of me, she acknowledged. Plus, they never fully understood your work. Medicine makes sense to them. Technology is this mysterious black box. When I told them what happened, they immediately assumed the software failure must have been preventable, must have been someone's fault. It was, I admitted. Partly mine, partly the hospital boards, partly the testing teams. Systems this complex rarely fail because of just one person. I know that now, Jessica said quietly. But at the time, I needed someone to blame. You weren't there when it happened, so you couldn't defend yourself. By the time I started to process things more rationally, the narrative was set. Breaking it meant admitting how badly we'd all behaved. We talked for hours, unpacking months of misunderstandings and hurt feelings. By the time darkness fell, we'd cried, laughed, and begun to rediscover the connection that had once seemed unbreakable. What about Michael? I asked eventually. Alex mentioned you two almost broke up over this. Jessica nodded slowly. I pushed him away. Kept telling him he deserved someone without a potential malpractice suit hanging over their head. He refused to leave, said we'd face it together. That's when I knew he was the one I wanted to marry. He's a good man, I acknowledged. His calls were always the most reasonable during that first week after I left the wedding. He never bought into the blame Kane narrative, Jessica admitted. Kept telling me we needed to talk to you directly. I should have listened sooner. As summer turned to fall, my relationship with my parents began its own healing process. The first Sunday dinner I attended after the wedding was tense, laden with unspoken apologies and lingering hurt. But each gathering became easier, more natural, as we all committed to better communication. My father, never one for emotional discussions, expressed his regret through action rather than words. He began asking detailed questions about my work, genuinely trying to understand the software development process. My mother, more verbal in her contrition, regularly acknowledged how poorly they had handled the situation. We lost sight of what matters most, she told me during a private moment in her kitchen. Protecting Jessica's feelings seemed so important that we forgot we have 2 children who deserve our support. The foundation I created to improve medical software safety standards became a family affair. Jessica contributed clinical insights. My father leveraged his hospital connections to facilitate adoption, and even my mother, with her pediatric expertise, helped ensure child-specific medical needs were properly addressed in the protocols. Working together on this project helped rebuild trust in ways that mere apologies couldn't. We were creating something positive from our shared pain, transforming a family crisis into an opportunity for industry-wide improvement. Sophia remained my rock throughout this process, offering perspective when family dynamics threatened to pull me back into unhealthy patterns. Our relationship deepened through the crisis, her unwavering support showing me what true partnership looked like. "You know," she observed one evening as we discussed the foundation's progress, "in a strange way, this whole ordeal might have been necessary." Necessary? Being humiliated at my sister's wedding was necessary? Not that part, she clarified. But this reckoning, this honesty, your family had communication problems long before the software incident. Maybe you needed something this dramatic to break old patterns. She wasn't wrong. The Sullivan family had always prided itself on closeness while avoiding difficult conversations. We celebrated achievements but rarely discussed disappointments. We proclaimed unconditional support while harboring unspoken expectations. The wedding debacle had forced us to confront these dysfunctional patterns. By the one-year anniversary of Jessica's wedding, enough healing had occurred that we could gather for a proper celebration. Michael suggested renewing their vows in an intimate ceremony with only immediate family present, a do-over of sorts, with me fully included this time. In the small chapel where we had all been baptized as children, Jessica and Michael reaffirmed their commitment to each other. My father walked her down the aisle again. My mother dabbed at tears, and I stood proudly as the officiant asked who supported this union. Her family, we answered in unison, the word carrying new weight after all we had endured to reclaim its meaning. At the dinner afterward, Jessica raised her glass for a toast. "To second chances," she said, her eyes finding mine. "To the courage to face difficult truths, and to the love that survives them." Looking around that table at my sister who had rediscovered her compassion, my parents who had recognized their fallibility, my girlfriend who had stood by me through darkness, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year: wholeness. The road to reconciliation hadn't been easy or straight. There had been setbacks along the way, moments when old hurts resurfaced and threatened to derail our progress. But we had persevered, committed to rebuilding what had nearly been destroyed through misunderstanding and poor communication. What I learned through this painful journey was that true family resilience isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about having the courage to address problems directly, to speak truth even when it's uncomfortable, to extend forgiveness when it's difficult, and to accept responsibility when it would be easier to blame others. I also discovered something about myself. My capacity for both boundaries and forgiveness was greater than I had known. I could stand firm in my right to be treated with respect while still opening my heart to those who had hurt me once they showed genuine remorse. The software failure that had nearly torn our family apart ultimately led to improved safety standards that would protect countless patients. The wedding that had excluded me paved the way for deeper, more authentic family connections than we had ever known before. From pain came purpose. From betrayal came breakthrough. As I look back now on that devastating wedding day when my congratulations went unacknowledged and my presence seemed unwelcome, I recognize it as both an ending and a beginning. The end of superficial family harmony built on avoidance rather than honesty. The beginning of a harder but infinitely more rewarding journey toward authentic connection. Have you ever experienced a painful family misunderstanding that seemed impossible to overcome? Or found yourself excluded without explanation? I hope my story offers some encouragement that even the deepest wounds can heal with time, truth, and willingness to rebuild. If you found this story meaningful, please hit like and subscribe to hear more journeys of family reconciliation. Share in the comments your own experiences with healing broken relationships. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles is the first step toward finding our way back to each other. Thank you for listening. And remember, in family relationships, the most difficult conversations are often the most necessary ones.